When you think of quick beef recipes, your mind naturally gravitates towards steak. But not all recipes that are quick and made with beef have to be steak. Today I'm going to show you 3 different recipes of how I like to cook my beef when I'm not in the mood for steak, but I still want something quick and delicious. Beef and noodles together are absolutely delicious. When the movie Parasite came out and people were putting like high quality steak with an instant pack of ramyun, it took the world by storm and everyone who tried it absolutely loved it. So this is my version, not of that dish, but of that combination. So we're gonna make a very quick satay noodle with a beautiful, delicious satay sauce, and we're gonna top that off with some perfectly cooked beef. For this, I'm gonna be using some Bolzico beef ribeye. Very simple. What we're gonna do is start by building the sauce. So I already have some egg noodles that are cooked right here. Nice and bouncy, and that's gonna be stir-fried once the sauce is thickened. You can do this off the fire for the meantime, just to mix everything. Then we're gonna put it on the fire and start bringing everything to simmer. So we're gonna start with some coconut milk, or coconut cream rather, some smooth peanut butter. This peanut butter already has some sweetness to it. Grate in our garlic, some curry powder, some honey, some salt, and we're gonna go slowly by bringing this up to simmer and melting everything together and then thickening it out. Our satay sauce is coming along really well. The oil's just separating out of the coconut cream, which is really nice. It's exactly what we wanted. We have a pan here that's getting nice and hot with some hot oil. I have a steak, which I'm just gonna now very quickly season with some salt and pepper. I'm using here the ribeye, grass-fed ribeye, nice and thick. We're actually gonna cook this just to medium rare. While that's finishing up, grab your cooked noodles, and we're just gonna toss that in with our sauce here, just like you would pasta. Always start with less than you need to make sure that you have that good ratio. Just for a kick of acidity, the noodles we're gonna finish with a little bit of lemon juice, about 1/4 of lemon. At this point, I can turn off the fire, let this chill a little bit. Time to turn our steak around. Always add a little more salt if you need it. I like to make sure that I'm cooking all the edges just because it looks prettier. At this point, you can cook it to the doneness that you prefer. If you want to cook this to rare, up to you. One of the most important things with beef, especially steak that's nice and thick like this, let it rest for 5 minutes before cutting it through. It just allows the juices to go back in. Really key. Now we can go ahead and start plating our noodles. So you'll see that satay sauce is just clinging to those noodles, which is exactly what we wanted. That is rich. Steak should be well rested. Let's see what it cooked to. Boom, perfection. This is a dish you make for dinner. This is a dish you bring to a party. This dish just looks so good. First off, you start with these really rich, beautiful and creamy satay noodles. That paired with the ribeye. So good. Mongolian beef is one of those things that I don't think comes from Mongolia. It probably was invented with like Chinese American cuisine. It's a delicious dish. It's just kind of like a sweetened soy stir fry with some beef. If you're sick of your beefsteak Tagalog, or if you're sick of your beef and broccoli, Mongolian beef is a good option to try out, and you can just toss in whatever vegetables you have. I'm gonna show you how to make the base, and then from that base, you can play around with different veg and stuff. So today for this, I'm gonna be using the Bolzico beef picanha, which is such a great cut. It's very lean, but it has a nice fat cap, which we're gonna render out into the pan, and just carries so much of that beefy grass-fed flavor. So chop up some ginger, some garlic, and some onions. And then once you have that ready, it basically is all about just combining it. But the first thing we're gonna do, take our beef out of the pack. Once you have that, you'll see, this is what we call the grain. So the grain is basically where the muscle fibers go. You wanna cut against the grain, and that's what's gonna make sure it keeps it tender. So nice strips here. If you cut it and you see kind of lines going this way, then you've done it wrong. If you cut it and kind of see like holes, then you mean you've cut it against the grain. This is gonna get dusted with some cornstarch. It's gonna help thicken the sauce and just give it kind of like a very unctuous, luxurious mouthfeel. Shake off any excess, and then we're gonna use that for the stir frying. Get a pan out, nice and hot. A little bit of oil goes in your pan. Steak goes in, steak strips rather. If the beef sticks to the pan, not an issue, even better. It's just gonna leave so much flavor for us to play around with. Beef has a beautiful brown color on it. Let's fish out the beef. Add back some oil. Throw in our garlic, our ginger, and our onions. We don't want these to kind of cook down too much. We still want them to be really bright, almost acidic, because that's gonna go perfectly with the sweet sauce that we have going. And you wanna scrape, really scrape those like gnarly bits and pieces of flavor. So you see that, for me, that's good. It's getting nice and brown, slightly softer. Then we're gonna go ahead and add in our soy sauce. You don't want to burn that, so you're going to quickly add that with some water, some red chili flakes, and some brown sugar. Now all we have to do, let this bubble away and let this get really nice and thick. Once it's bubbling nicely and your sauce is starting to thicken, then we can go ahead and add back our beef. So our beef here is still maybe like a rare to medium rare. But what we're looking for now is to cook it slightly more, but also the starch that's hanging onto the beef, have that go into the sauce. And this is just gonna bubble away and thicken very nicely. So now you'll see the consistency of the sauce is super syrupy, which is exactly what we're looking for. It's gonna be really glazy. Just look at it when I put it here. That is just pure flavor. Top that off with some spring onions. That looks so intense. Like the levels of fat, sodium, and sugar in this dish, no bueno for el healtho, but super bueno for your tummy. Nico would kill me if he saw me do something like this to his beef. So sticky. That's addicting. Definitely addicting. Woo! Schnitzel is a thing that you see very common with chicken. You're okay with the concept of fried fish because of fish and chips. But when you start mentioning kind of like shallow fried or even deep fried beef, a lot of people freak out, including my brother-in-law, which is why I hope he doesn't see this recipe. But in Argentina, they do have something called the Milanesa, which obviously comes from their Italian roots. And it's basically a nice beef cutlet. All the beef that we're bringing in today is available from Bolzico Beef. All you gotta do is go on our website, chingoladeli.ph, link below if you guys wanna buy it. The new cut is called Cuadril. It's a rump cut that is really great value, super lean but extremely tender. It's kind of like a tenderloin, but it's much longer, which is really cool because when you cook it as a steak, it looks absolutely beautiful. So it's perfect for a Milanesa because it'll look really nice and hefty. So before we start preparing that, let's just get all our other elements good to go. So I have a little kind of like, I'm gonna serve it with a coleslaw. You can serve this with coleslaw, with some rice, with some gravy, really up to you. I like coleslaw because it's a good balance to kind of like the fattiness or the oiliness of a schnitzel or a beef Milanesa. Mayonnaise, Dijon mustard. So you can go full American coleslaw, really thick and kind of very creamy, or you can go very light coleslaw, which is what I'm gonna go for today. That was some vinegar, a little bit of honey for some sweetness. Mix that together, pinch of salt. Start adding our carrots and our cabbage. It's like a properly tossed salad. The sauce really has to touch every single ingredient in there. That's really important. Next, we're gonna make kind of like a seasoned breadcrumb. So if you only have panko to use, don't freak out. What you can do is just run it through your fingers like this so you have something nice and fine. And then to give it a cool color, we're gonna add in some chopped parsley. For our flour, very simple, very basic. Just some regular AP flour, seasoned with some salt. You can get fancy here. Add in some garlic powder, some onion powder if you want to. And finally, a little egg mix. Egg with some milk. And then that's pretty much it. All we gotta do now is pound our beef. We're gonna take our Cuadril, and a lot of people, what they do is they put it in between two pieces of plastic wrap. You can also just put it on board like this and then use kind of like whatever reusable material you have. I'm using a silicone mat here. If you don't have one of those kind of like meat tenderizing hammers, mallets, you can use a dough roller, a rolling pin. That's how much I bake. And then we're just gonna pound it. We're trying to break down the protein without making holes, right? So because this is a big piece of meat, you're really gonna need to work it to get it, you know, where you want it to be. So it's nice and flattened. We're still quite thick here, but I'm actually not against it. I'm gonna give it one more whack. Just, you know, keep whacking that piece of beef. So you're left with one beautiful piece of beef. This goes first into the flour. So that's kind of like step one. Make sure you get all the nooks and crannies. Always remove the excess. This goes quickly into the egg wash. Dredge, and that slowly goes into our pot here. At the end of the day, this is still a steak, so you need to let it rest. Give it a few seconds to kind of just let those juices come together so that they don't cut out when you open them. And in the same time, since it is a steak, you could cook this as a rare schnitzel or as a medium rare schnitzel or as a well done schnitzel. It really comes down to your preference. I hope we achieved something like maybe a medium, not a medium rare, maybe a medium, but I wouldn't hate it if it was medium rare. Moment of silence. It's a medium. Perfect. Serve that with our coleslaw. Lemon wedges, just for some balance. And I'm gonna try this straight off the cutting board. Look at that, still juicy. Yep. That's the one, folks.